What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte coming to you today, and holy, we have a great video on topic for you as the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't know what else to say. It's been a rough season for the Penguins, and another really heartbreaking loss for them last night against the Colorado Avalanche. I haven't really watched the Penguins much this season, but watching that game a little bit, that's some of the best hockey they played in the first period. And the way that this game ended is just a typical Penguins game. And we're going to discuss the Penguins today. Obviously, kind of the highlight being this game, but really the amalgamation of this entire season and kind of what the summer looks like for the Penguins going into the offseason, as they will likely miss the playoffs once again this year. It's not official yet. They don't have the E next to their name quite yet, but it is getting really close to that point, especially with games like this. But let's take a look at the Penguins. So, looking at their season so far, it's been a pretty disappointing season. 30-30-10 is their record. They have 70 points, and they currently sit 7th in the Metropolitan Division. Of course, the only team behind them being the Columbus Blue Jackets. Goals for, 25th in the league. Goals against, 13th in the league. And that's kind of interesting because normally the storyline for the Pittsburgh Penguins is this is a team that can score a lot of goals but has a problem keeping the puck out of the net. And that's kind of the narrative you would expect, right? Especially with the goaltending for the Penguins. But that's not necessarily the case. It's more so when they give up goals, it is in the most inopportune times. And that's been the issue with the goaltending is it's not necessarily that they're giving up 6 or 7 goals a game like, I don't know, some teams maybe out on the West Coast, San Jose Sharks, but it's more so the timing of some of these goals, and this game was another good example of that. At one point in this game, halfway through the second period, it was 4-0 Pittsburgh on the road in Colorado. There were a ton of Penguins fans there. They were all excited, and rightfully so, because it kind of looked like they were going to scoot their way to a win. Except they give up 2 goals late in the second period. And this is what I'm talking about, that the goals coming at inopportune times. So the Penguins make it 4-0, right? And I think within a minute, or I think it was less than a minute, Colorado had answered to make it 4-1. Bad time for a goal. And then you were kind of thinking to yourself, all right, well, it's not great that they scored here, but if they can get through the second period at 4-1, going into the third period, they should be all right. Well, then again, the back-breaking goal. I truly believe that was the back-breaking goal that gave Colorado all the momentum, all the mindset going into the second period locker room that, hey, this is a 2-goal game now, and we have a real chance to win this hockey game. And once that goal went in to make it 4-2, again, you talk about inopportune times to give up goals. That is a prime example. Less than a minute after making it 4-0, and in the final minute of the second period, those were 2 goals that you just sensed it. You were like, oh no, this is going to be a really hard third period. Even if the Penguins would have won that game, you knew it was going to be a nail-biter down to the finish, especially with the way Colorado's been playing and especially the way the Penguins have been playing. The combination of both kind of led to this situation. And, so that's kind of the game, right? Of course, they lose the game in overtime. There were a couple good things to look at. I do want to talk about that for a minute here because there was positives. And Jesse Puljujarvi, I think it's Jesse, it's pronounced, but Puljujarvi gets his second goal with the Penguins this season in the spot that you want to see him scoring from. This is not a guy that's going to be scoring goals from the top of the circle or, getting nice shots, nice snipes over the goalie's left pad or something like that. You're not going to see that from Puljujarvi. He is the guy that he's going to be standing in front of the net. He's going to be in the house, in the crease, tipping pucks in, getting rebounds, exactly like the goal that he did. And that was actually a nice shot. He actually, it wasn't a shot, but he whiffed on the first when he tried to swing at it in the net, fighting for position with the defenseman on him. The puck went down to the ground, and he was able to swipe it in. And that's a pretty good play there. That's not easy to do. Missing on the first swing, still being able to get the puck when it lands and getting it in the net. Very difficult. A lot of people think that's easy. Oh, it's a yawning net. It should be easy. It is anything but. And that was a big goal for Puljujarvi. Hopefully it gives him some confidence. He hasn't played very much for the Penguins this year. He's been scratched. He hasn't played very much there. So it kind of seems like it's one of those things that's a confidence booster for him. Also, Sidney Crosby, another great season for Sid. And it's kind of a shame, though, because of how good he's played this year, that this team is likely not going to make the playoffs. And I think that a lot of people out there, including me, not even a Penguins fan, can tell you Crosby deserves better. He deserves a better product on the ice other than himself. And this is kind of a shot at the rest of the team because it just seems like there's a lack of buy-in from everybody on the Penguins. And despite that, Crosby is still producing at levels we would expect from Sidney Crosby, right? So once again, looking at the Penguins here, their schedule is kind of indicative of how things have kind of gone for them. They've had little stretches early in the season. They had a 5-game winning streak. They've had some opportunities to really maybe pull away and maybe get back in the race, but they've had too many games where they've lost. Like, they have way too many losing streaks and, like, bad losing streaks, right? So you got 1, 2, 3, so wins, and then 1, 2, 3, 3-game losing streak, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4-game losing streak, 1, another loss, 1, 2, 3. Now you're on another 3-game losing streak. And what is that? In their past 10, 1, 2, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So in this block of 10 games, from game 61 to 70, they have won 2 of those 8 games. That's not good enough. And if you want to make the playoffs, you got to win games in February and March. You cannot go 2-8 in a 10-game stretch during that time of the year. It's borderline impossible. Unless you're a team like the Vancouver Canucks or the Winnipeg Jets where you already have 90 points, you could maybe get away with that. And then the question is going to be, well, is this going to be a first-round elimination because you looked horrible during the spring right up into the playoffs? It's never good. This is the worst time of the season to be losing games. And for Pittsburgh, I think it's a combination of, and I've talked about this with my team, which is the Islanders. A very similar situation, in my opinion. I think the Islanders and the Penguins are a lot related in the sense that they have older teams that they're just trying to get more years out of. They're trying to squeeze all the juice out of the lemon possible, and just to the point where it's like, this is really painful to watch. And the problem is, it's more so the Crosby contract situation, right? Like, if Crosby's going to stay in Pittsburgh and maybe sign an extension this summer, which I think most people would expect, it's going to come down to what is the direction of this team. If this team's going to still be fighting for a playoff spot next season and maybe the next 2 or 3 years, well, Crosby's going to stick around. He's going to stay in Pittsburgh. But if this team is all of a sudden going into a rebuild and Gino Malkin's no longer there, Letang gets traded to Montreal or Ottawa or whatever ends up happening with him and everybody else on this team, well, Sid's going to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go chase a cup somewhere before I retire. And I think the goal for Crosby is to stay in Pittsburgh. He wants to be a forever Penguin. But if enough circumstances change, maybe he will reevaluate that. And until he's really forced to make that decision, he's going to stay in Pittsburgh. I truly believe that. I think a lot of people believe that. There's going to be a lot of people saying this summer, is Crosby going to leave for Colorado or Montreal or whatever stupid rumor you want to hear? Listen, anything's possible, right? If Gretzky can be traded, anything is possible. But I just don't, the way Crosby is, and the way the Penguins are kind of treating Crosby throughout his career, I think it's very unlikely that they would trade hhim or start a rebuild while they have him in his final twilight years. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. And, then it kind of comes into question, who else is available on the Penguins? Because right now you look at this group, and there's a lot of things about this team that you should, you look at Daily Faceoff, there's actually some pretty decent players on the Penguins. And this is by no means, I would say, like a cup contending team. But, Brian Rust, right? Pretty good player a few years back. Sidney Crosby, Gino Malkin, Ricard Raquel, Michael Bunting, Riley Smith, Lars Eller, Nola Chari, Jesse Puljujarvi. There's some pretty decent players in that forward group that make you think, well, yeah, you know what? This is not a cup contender, but that's a decent roster that should be probably more respectable than what their standings and their record have shown so far. Now, I will say, and we're probably going to see this here in the last, the season stats, Riley Smith is one that I really look at. He really has not performed at the level that I would expect. Only 34 points. It's not terrible, but I thought we would have seen more from Riley Smith. I was actually really annoyed. I was like upset that the Penguins had gotten Riley Smith last summer because I thought that was a great trade for them. He seemed like he would be kind of like another Patrick Hornquist-esque player. It just hasn't worked out that way. And if anything, Puljujarvi might be that next Patrick Hornquist, or that Michael Bunting might be that next type of player in Pittsburgh. But I expect them to trade Riley Smith this summer, probably for less than what they got him for last year. But I think just because of the salary cap situation and the roster room, they're going to try and move him this summer to, create another job for somebody else in the organization. And, that's one of the biggest upsets, in my opinion, was seeing the whole Riley Smith situation kind of unfold. Looking at some other players here, that fourth line is pitiful. You can't really blame Puljujarvi. Again, he hasn't played a ton, so it's hard to really, evaluate that. Nola Chari, he's a fourth line center, so you take with that what you will. Emil Bemstrom played okay. He spent most of the season with the Blue Jackets. They traded for him at the deadline, so hard to be upset with that one. I think someday Valtteri Pustinen, I forgot, I always pronounce his name wrong, but Pustinen is probably going to be a top 6 player on this roster next year. Whether they trade a guy like Brian Rust or Rickard Rakell, probably more likely Rakell. I think Rust's contract is going to be harder to move. But if they are to move on from a guy like Rickard Rakell this summer, Pustinson could probably move up this roster. And that's kind of what I want to talk about too. The disappointing players, right? Riley Smith hasn't performed to the level we wanted. Brian Rust, kind of the same story, especially Rickard Rakell. Again, another guy, when they acquired him from Anaheim, I thought that was going to be a really good pickup for the Penguins, and it just hasn't materialized at all. It just has not worked for them, and it's one of those things that you're kind of sitting here saying to yourself, what could have been, right? Guys that were really good in their places before, and they're not working out here. Why? Right? They're playing with Crosby. They're playing with Malkin. Why aren't they working out? And that's kind of what's going to lead to the final part of this conversation. Actually, there's 2 things left we have to talk about. So obviously the goaltending, I've talked about that ad infinitum, so we're not even going to discuss that today. The defense is kind of an issue. The defense is also an issue for this team, and it's something worth talking about. And, you've got P.O. Joseph, Letang, Carlson, Pettersson, Ludvig, and Saint Ivani. That's just a team that's just pretty beat up. And even with that, they're just not good enough. There's just not enough depth on that blue line to really give you any confidence that this team is capable of really doing anything special. And considering the only guy they're really missing is Ryan Graves on the blue line, it's pretty indicative of just how things have gone wrong in Pittsburgh this year. And that leads, like I said, now let's get to the final part of the conversation, which is the coaching situation. This is a tough one because I know Penguins fans remember the glory days with Mike Sullivan winning Stanley Cups and all that success they had in the late 2010s. But, this is no longer that team. This is no longer, that message seems to be growing stale. And I think the reason that some of these guys, like a Jesse Puljujarvi or a Riley Smith or a Rickard Rakell, you go down the list of guys that are not getting it, you wonder, is it those players? Yes. But is it also the coaching staff? And I do think that's going to come up. I think that message that he had back in the day, it's just not working the way it did. And I think that the Penguins need a new head coach there. It's obviously not something that is ideal for the Penguins. You never like seeing a new head coach and, firing of a guy like Mike Sullivan who has had such a great career in Pittsburgh. You almost hope that it's going to be maybe a situation where he kind of, leaves the team and relieves himself of the duties instead of getting fired, which I would kind of expect. I think the Penguins have enough respect toward Mike Sullivan to let him do that before they have to fire him. But kind of the way I think this has gone is we'll see a new head coach in Pittsburgh next season. We'll probably see some little changes. They definitely need to make some changes to the bottom 6. Again, I thought some of these guys were going to be good additions, and they haven't worked, right? You've got Jeff Carter, Matt Nieto, all those guys. You just were expecting a little bit more, and we just never really saw it from them. And even going back to guys that are now traded, even guys like Mikael Granlund and Daniel Sprong, and you go down the list. How many forwards have been in Pittsburgh and it just didn't work out? So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the Pittsburgh Penguins? What do you think they should do this summer? Should they fire Mike Sullivan? Should they keep him around? Should they trade some of these guys like Rickard Rakell and Jeff Carter? That's not going to be an easy one to move, but you get the point, right? What trades should they make to make this team better? Because I think the idea is, especially this time of year, it's more noticeable, and this kind of goes back to the Islanders, is the older teams, you can tell they have mileage on them. And the Penguins are an example of a team that, yeah, they had that playoff success, but it does come at a cost. That many hockey games played over the years, constantly getting hit, constantly taking hits, blocking shots, everything else involved in hockey, it does wear on you, especially when you make the playoffs for as many years as Pittsburgh did. And I think that we're starting to see that the mileage and the road trudge kind of coming up on the Penguins and kind of getting them in the end now. So let me know what you guys think, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time. Peace out, guys.